Welcome to the Unlock Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Tim DiFrancesco, and Tim is a physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach and spent 6 seasons as the head strength and conditioning coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. He is also the founder of TD Athletes Edge. He's doing big things in the fitness and athletic industry, so I'm pumped to have him on to share his story and talk about all of the amazing work that he's doing. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to have you.
Excited to be here, Casey. Thanks.
Yeah, so let's just jump in with your backstory, just a little bit where you're from, and then your journey to working your way up to have the opportunity that you had with the Lakers. And I know that's a pretty loaded question, but I mean, let's just jump into it.
Let's go. I knew, I think early on, where even in high school, I wanted to be, I love sports, I love medicine, I love the human body and how it all got put together into one thing was something that I wanted to figure out how could I do something for a career for my life that included all those things, and just really tried to get exposure to as many different stops at the buffet of under the umbrella of sports medicine, sports performance, strength and conditioning, rehab, etc. And that, I guess that started with my undergrad as where I went to Endicott College for athletic training and finished that program and went directly to UMass Lowell for a doctorate in physical therapy. And I think at that time, I basically stepped back for a bit and felt like, okay, I've been exposed to more of the sports medicine and rehab side, but I had this pull after I left PT school to really explore the performance and strength and conditioning world. Really dove headfirst into that, and between working at a outpatient PT clinic after PT school in a traditional setting, and then also at the same time starting up my own performance training and strength and conditioning business, which is TD Athletes Edge, and we'll talk more about what that platform looks like today. But I really fell in love with being able to have the perspective of, as a physical therapist and sports medicine professional, on how you then help to form and guide people from a strength and conditioning and performance and fitness avenue. So I really enjoyed that. And then all of a sudden I got an opportunity to take a position in minor league basketball. So NBA minor leagues is the NBA D League. Mm-hmm. And there was a position that came my way with the Bakersfield Jam, and out in Bakersfield, California. And I was at a point where I could take advantage of that. And I was willing to take all my life and roots and everything that I had in on the East Coast growing up in New England to go out and explore and be a part of this team setting environment.
Was that a friend connection? Like, how did that opportunity come about?
That connection came through my high school basketball coach. He took a position with the Bakersfield Jam as an assistant coach, and basically called me, ironically, looking to speak with my brother Scott, who at the time was working for the New York Yankees as an athletic trainer in their farm system, and say, hey, would you be interested in this position? My coach, I think, just essentially assumed that I was really wrapped up in the PT job I had, as well as running TD Athletes Edge, and felt like, just sort of assumed I wouldn't be interested in the scenario he had on the table. So what ended up happening is Scott was basically like, he wasn't able to accept any of the terms of what was put on the table, just from a scheduling standpoint of what he was doing with baseball would have not allowed him to do.
Well, that's like a year round.
Yeah, exactly. So I basically ended up saying, look, I would love to take advantage of this, and I'm in a point where I can do it. And I really craved the ability to put myself into the team setting, which I hadn't really done with what I had under my belt from a credential and academic standpoint. Wanted to use those things to get myself into a team setting in the sports medicine and performance scenario. So off I went to Bakersfield, California, and was immersed in what is minor league sports. And that's a crazy, hectic, wild environment, but it was great. I had to wear all the hats. I was the head athletic trainer on paper, but realistically, I was spending more, if not most, equal amounts of time doing things like travel coordinating and packing the luggage and doing the laundry and strength and conditioning and nutrition and all this other stuff.
Right.
So you wear all the hats in that environment. I did that for 2 years, and during that time, the Bakersfield Jam had become affiliated with the LA Lakers, and so I had, without really knowing it, popped onto the radar of Gary Vitti and some of the staff with the LA Lakers, and that eventually turned into a phone call and an email about me interviewing for the position of head strength and conditioning coach of the LA Lakers. And
where was your mind at that point? Because I mean, that's like, I mean, you think about somebody in, our type of field, like that's like a dream come true. I mean, that type of phone call, right?
That's right.
So I mean, was that just like the biggest celebration day ever?
It was surreal for sure. It was surreal. And the funny thing is, I was not on that journey. I did not go into minor league sports with the agenda that a lot of people do. And it's not that either agenda is right or wrong, but my agenda was not what most people's are, which is what most people's is, which is to get to use that minor league experience to get to the major leagues. And so I was really, truly going to do that to get exposure in the team setting, and was also really loving what I was doing with TD Athletes Edge, developing that. So I wanted to help myself to be able to do that. So, but when like you said, when the LA Lakers call and say, you're our guy, then that's a pretty surreal and unexpected, but welcoming moment. And so I absolutely remember reading the email saying we want you to come out and sit down and talk with us about this, and remember it really specifically. So that was a really special moment. Obviously took advantage of the opportunity in front of me and ended up with the Lakers, spent the last 6 NBA seasons with them and gained a tremendous amount of experience and exposure and credibility, I think, from my time there, and really built out a more deep and robust toolbox of how I approach my work with anybody that I get a chance to work with of any level. So,
right. Well, it really makes you step up your game as well, because I mean, people have invested a lot of money into these players, and you're kind of like in charge of their fitness, or, whether or not they get injured, their prevention, their prehab as well, like all aspects that they've invested in, like that's a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
But it's also cool because like you get to work with athletes who that's their job. They want to get better. So they're listening to you and doing what you say, which is kind of different than if you're in a regular PT setting or any kind of therapy setting, to where they might do it, they might not, but they're not getting paid millions of dollars to be at their best, right?
Yeah, yes and no. So what I found quickly and going into it thinking exactly what you just laid out, it would be the case. What happens is oftentimes you have these $1 million contracts that are guaranteed, and so that almost ends up acting as a jumping off point for them to take the attitude of, well, I don't really have to do that because I'm going to get paid this amount of money no matter what. And so I think often I was certainly surprised at the challenges and hurdles that you're faced with and the things that you have to be able to massage and work through in that position. And that was one of the big things that I really took away from that, was the development of my skill set to be able to manage and work with relationships with people that aren't necessarily, because here's what you have to think about. These guys at the NBA level are playing basketball from the time they're 5, 6, 7 years old all the way through. They're now running through AAU factories and putting lots of miles on their body. They're constantly breaking their body down and always doing physical work. And so now my job is to come in and get them to do more physical work than they're already doing on a daily basis. So there's no way that they can get out of 2 to 3 hours of practice every day, or practice and game and stuff like that. And not that they're trying to get out of games typically, but
Right.
but the workload physically adds up on just the basketball skill development, practice work, and game work. And so then my job is to come in and get them to do additional physical work.
Right.
So because of that, it was actually a challenge, but at the same time, a challenge being an opportunity for me to really have to be faced with how do you get to a middle ground to where, hey, I need to get this from this person, and they want to only go halfway, but I need them to get to here. And that was a really good experience and a chance for me to develop really, really strong relationship building skills, which then turn into trust and respect, and then results from there.
Who was an athlete that you worked with during your time there that kind of surprised you with the extra effort that they put in?
Meta World Peace, formerly Ron Artest, also potentially goes by Panda's friend, depending on whatever. I'm not really sure. Is absolutely one of my favorites. I go back to this all the time. There's a Meta. I had Meta a couple different times. So he was with the Lakers when I first got there, and then he left the Lakers and then came back. And so I had him at the very end of his career as of last year, and so. He surprised me from the get-go as far as his willingness to learn, listen, and follow an outsider. At the time when I came in, I was not known by anybody in the NBA and had not had NBA experience, was just right immediately in my interaction with Meta. It was like he was on the edge of his seat trying to learn anything that I talked about. And so I think that sort of willingness by him to learn and listen to new ideas and new things that he could incorporate into sharpening his body was probably what allowed him to play until he was nearly 40 and at a very high level. And so the story that goes along with that is on the very last practice of what probably was his career, unless there's some remarkable additional his contract
comes back as Panda.
Exactly.
Right.
What was probably his last practice day, he followed through on the exact routine that I saw him follow through on 6 years prior, and probably before me getting there had followed this routine 12 years prior to that. And the practice ended and he walked into the weight room to execute his entire flexibility and cool down routine that he did on a daily basis. I just don't know a lot of people that would have, in the situation, it was obvious. He knew as well as everybody knew that was probably his last practice. A lot of people would have just kind of hit the showers and headed home. But I think that was a really, really powerful moment for me that I'll always remember.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like you were saying, I mean, he had played so many seasons. And I mean, the fact that he was still, like you said, on the edge of his seat, like ready to learn and ready to get better.
That's
right. It just shows the type of mindset those type of elite athletes have. It's incredible.
It's exactly right. Yeah.
And so, obviously, you're going through a lot of things these teams are going through. Like, you're traveling and you're doing all of these things. And basketball, there's a lot of games and there's a lot of, you're in different cities every night. How did that affect you personally? Because that had to have been a lot, day in, day out.
It was just the schedule and the pace of the schedule, the number of time zones that you cross at the pace that they're crossed is something that there's no human being that could possibly be prepared for that. And you throw that into a very high pressure situation where, and especially with an organization like the Lakers, the expectation is that winning is happening during that time, and so the magnifying glass is very, very close, and the heat lamp is very hot, and so the schedule is very, very challenging. And me personally, I don't know that I ever really truly adapted or got used to that travel schedule. I'm not sure anybody ever does. And and you simply have to find ways to manage and be better at dealing with it. But it's I mean, a classic schedule would be a Sunday night game at 6 p.m. in LA that would then get over by 9:30, would allow you to get onto an airplane by 10:30, 11 p.m. That airplane may stay in the same time zone, and it may cross a time zone to then get into another city at 2 a.m. And you're then getting bags up to hotel rooms, etc., and trying to get some sleep by 3, maybe 4 a.m. And then meetings and treatments and strength work starts by 10 a.m. either in the hotel or at a local at the arena that you're going to play at. And oftentimes you will then play that same day. So this would be a back-to-back situation that happens regularly in the NBA season. Mm-hmm. You're going to basically be ready to roll at 10 a.m. and going through all these things that go into the game day preparation and do that game day all over again, and finish that game at, say, 11 o'clock midnight, and then probably more than likely get on another plane and either go back to LA or go to another city if it's a longer road trip. So that's a really common series of events, and it's absolutely exhausting. And what I found was, after a trip like that, even if it was, whether it was 2 days or 12 days, you basically are, when you do finally get a day to not have to go into the facility, which is many of the 6 seasons that I went through, there was you could count the number of days that you didn't have to go into the facility on one on one hand, and maybe on two hands if you were lucky. But I think that what happens is, what I notice is, physically I would essentially be awash. I would just be a zombie for like an entire 24-hour period just to get back to it's
kind of bounce back and
and just to break even. And then all of a sudden it's time to go back into that schedule again. So there's really, I have been a big NBA fan for my entire life. Thought I kind of had a good feel for what it was all about. Had realized I had absolutely no clue about the pace.
Well, I'm sure you gained a whole new respect for what they go through. And when you hear these 100%. Stories, it's easy to judge from the outside, right? So, whenever you're watching and then you hear stories like, oh, okay, we'll use LeBron as an example, right? He sat out a few games this past season. People are going crazy. I get it. It messes with ticket sales if he's healthy. But I mean, it's an extremely intense schedule, like you were saying. I can't even imagine that day in, day out. He's played for, he's had a pretty good run so far. And I could see how, I could see his reasoning. I could see it both ways, but I could see how that grueling schedule could impact that.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible to me that it's knowing what I know now, it's incredible to me that there's not more of the issues that people are amazed that there's issues about. And just think about, when you look at that scenario, and like you said, fans are up in arms, and sure, rightfully so on one hand. On the other hand, look at a guy like Larry Bird, who lasted 13 years. So 13 years now, you have to think about what do you want in terms of the playing the long game for this? Mm-hmm. Do you want to see and witness and watch LeBron for 20 seasons like happened with Kobe, or do you want that to end far before, just so that you could have seen him play every game consecutively?
Right.
It's humanly, physically not possible if you're not carefully managing appropriate rest stages within a schedule that doesn't allow that.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's crazy to hear about that type of schedule firsthand. Like you said, you knew about it, but you didn't really know until you put yourself into that. How was it for you trying to balance your family life? Because we were talking beforehand. I guess, your daughter's still, just a little over a year, so she didn't have that whole, you didn't miss a whole lot with that. But still, you're traveling, you're away from your wife.
Yep.
I could see it's how that would impact you, and then obviously all these other players with their families. But if you just want to touch on how you kind of dealt with that, because I think that's a huge part of it.
Well, I think that it's a real thing, and it's something that is very, very tricky and very, very hard to deal with for a lot of relationships, a lot of families that are have a person in pro sports, because it's so demanding with so few breaks. And so I think in my case, I was extremely lucky to have my wife be behind me in what I was embarking on and taking on, with the opportunity to be on the Lakers and a member of their sports medicine and performance staff. And so that was really, without that, then I think it's without that support and that person's willingness to be champion of what you're trying to do, in my case, then it's going to go bad really fast. I think the other piece is what my wife and I realized is that it made us appreciate the time that we had together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just looked at it that way, and
It's quality over quantity.
yeah, and being able to do that allowed us to kind of get through it in a manageable way, although it was never very easy and oftentimes not fun because of that. But once my daughter came into the picture, and I think it definitely magnifies, for me anyhow, what sacrifices you're making and what that means to the people around you. And so yeah, that's where now I'm in a position, stepping away from the Lakers,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to really connect and have a lot of moments that with my family that I otherwise, in the situation I was with the Lakers, would simply not be able to.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads us into the next topic. I definitely want you to jump into what you're doing now with TD Athletes Edge. And you've been putting out amazing content. And I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes. That way people can go follow you and check out what you're doing.
Thank you.
But if you want to kind of touch on what you're doing with that and what your vision for TD Athletes is.
TD Athletes Edge has been a platform for me and the core group of us that have worked on TD Athletes Edge in some iteration, some version, for over 10 years now. And we're now at a point where me stepping away from the Lakers allows TD Athletes Edge to be the primary focus and the one thing for me to be able to, and all of us within TD Athletes Edge, to be able to do what we want to do with that, which is we just believe that every person every human is an athlete, and every athlete is a human. And
Mm-hmm.
so we also feel that every human and every person is looking for an edge in terms of what they want to be doing and what they term performance. And so that's where the name TD Athletes Edge really stems from, and what drives what we do from that. And ultimately, we want to have a not only online ability and sort of internet type space, but also a physical space where we can offer high performance rehab and therapy, high performance strength and conditioning, nutrition, recovery strategy implementation, and even mind body connection work under one roof, that also is done in an evidence based and sports science driven platform and way. And so we're at a really, really fun place right now where we're creating those blueprints for that. And
that's awesome.
And we've worked really hard over the years to get our message out to our audience. And whether you are a pro athlete or you're somebody who used to play competitive sports, or somebody who just wants to feel better and look better and perform better through your daily activities, we believe there's tremendous amount of overlap in terms of what goes into a human being at their best. And so that's what we're working on right now, and putting together a really, really just class A team of people in different areas to be able to drive that vision and end up seeing that vision through.
It's amazing. And do you think the physical location, do you think that's going to be like near you in Boston? Or do you have any idea?
I think the initial one will be, and we have bigger visions and bigger plans to be able to. We've always strived to be able to put ourselves in a position to get to reach the most number of people that we possibly can, and still do it at the quality and the premium service that we strive to be able to give. So I think initially the first location will be in the Boston area, and we will go from there. But we recognize that to be able to do what we truly want to do in this space, in this field, it's going to require us to think beyond that as well. So lots of really cool things coming as we explore what that means.
That's really cool. And yeah, no, I love all of the content that you're putting together for that. I especially love the emphasis that you put on sleep and recovery. And sleep has been I've been really digging into that lately. I'm trying to write a blog post soon about just different ways to help. But you had I don't know if it was on Instagram or Instagram story once, but I loved it because you were in a hotel room, but you were going through different ways to help sleep better for higher performance if you're staying away from home, which for you, like, that was like your life. So I thought that post was really cool, and it really drew into my attention. So if you kind of wanted to go in just for a few minutes just on the sleep aspect and what you're really going to be teaching more as far as the recovery with sleep and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, great. I think that what we really believe strongly is that recovery is a skill, and that you should earn your recovery. So I cringe when I see people becoming hyper focused on. I think chronic recoverers is something that we need to be careful of staying away from. So earning the recovery, we still need to work hard and push the human body to its physical limits to then be able to have something to recover from. But then once you do that, recovery is a significantly important skill that you need in order to optimize all the work that you're doing.
Yeah. So chronic recoverer. Is that like somebody that sits and watches TVs all day? I'm like, oh, I'm recovering.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely falls into that category. But so I think that what you need to think about is what's the low hanging fruit for recovery, because there's all kinds of fancy things that you could get into that may or may not have validity, reliability, and evidence behind them to truly drive actual recovery of the human body. But what is proven and what is absolutely evidence based is something that we all do hopefully every 24 hours at some point, is sleep. And so I like to start with the low hanging fruit first, because so many people want to skip to the sexy, exciting, cool looking stuff in any category, whether it's training, nutrition, or recovery. And I just really feel really strongly that we need to rein ourselves in a bit and nail the basics and then move on. So sleep is really, really key, and there's some basic things that you can do in order to get better sleep and more sleep, which is where the body heals itself.
Exactly.
And not only the body but the brain as well. And so your mental health and wellness is impacted in terms of your quality of sleep and your willingness to address any sleep limitations that you have as well. So I think that a couple of things that we've talked about and that I talked about probably within the post that you mentioned there are making sure that your sleep environment is dark, quiet, and cool. That's so simple. It's so basic, but it's also really easy to impact immediately. And to whether it's your home sleep environment, your bedroom, and you're working to try to make it a little bit of a darker environment, or maybe you need to take out your television, which I just don't recommend having your television in your bedroom. It's so tempting to just check out one quick show, which turns into another show, which turns into that just constant blue light as you're falling asleep, and that impairing your ability to get a really deep sleep. So that kind of thing. And then temperature should be fairly easy to modify for most people within a reasonable amount to get it over on the cooler side of things. And usually what's been shown as most effective for the human body to have an environment to sleep in temperature wise is somewhere between 64 and 68 degrees. And so those are things that you can do right away and really kind of the other big thing that I've talked about and I continue to go back to is having a sleep routine. So something that you do leading into when it's bedtime, that a series of steps that you do that can be very, very basic, a warm shower, read a book, and write something down in a journal that you write down. I mean, whatever it is, it doesn't really.
It's just basic. I mean, even like,
exactly.
you look at we both have young daughters, right? You
Right.
realize how important that schedule is when you have a kid. Like that schedule, if you stray from that schedule, you're going to know about it. And I think we forget that as we get older because we can do whatever we want, right?
That's right.
But if you get back to that schedule, it's basic, and it's if you just look back to what used to work, like it's the exact same thing.
That's right.
Yeah, and something else that I've been doing, Tim, I'm sure you do something similar. If you have, you should try it out. I was listening to Sean Stevenson's podcast. He goes in a lot about sleep and different different aspects with that. But I have my phone set on the nighttime mode, so at like 8:30 or 9, my phone is on nighttime mode. So my screen basically looks kind of like sepia type. It gets rid of that blue light exposure. And then I have it on my computer as well. So the computer, it's a free app. It's called Flux. It's like F.LUX. And that's been amazing. I mean, it makes your screen look kind of funny for a few hours, but you get used to it, but it really helps a lot.
No, it makes a big difference, and I think it's night shift on the iPhone. That is that ability to shift that over and just because let's face it, there's this whole thing that's going on with all of us as humans right now, where there's a lot of interference and noisy, not so good stuff that is in our environment that wasn't there 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago. That is making it harder and harder for us to stay anchored to these important things. And so you have to take, because of that, you have to take additional measures to combat those things. And that's a perfect example. I absolutely use both of those and
that's awesome.
And love them.
Yeah, that's cool. And let's jump into a little bit of what you're doing with your podcast. Tim and his brother Scott, they have a podcast called it's not Athlete's Edge. It's
right, Edge Factor Radio.
Edge Factor Radio. I knew I got the words mixed up, but
that's okay.
Edge Factor Radio. It's really awesome. Like they're doing a really great job. I mean, one of your first guests is like Steve Nash. I was like, okay, no big deal. Just hanging out with Steve. But but you guys are doing an amazing job, and definitely gonna put all the links to that as well. But if you just want to talk about what you and your brother are doing, and I know he has an amazing story too, but what you guys are doing with the podcast and what you're trying to accomplish with that.
Edge Factor Radio is a place where we get a chance to, through audio-based content, obviously, which is not necessarily something we had dug into within as much as the content of things that we've put out there. We get a chance to interact and share thoughts and share ideas and learn with people in terms of this really unique setting, which obviously you and I are on right now through your great podcast, but we're really excited about it. And I think with Edge Factor Radio, what we want to be able to do is talk about these small changes, small things that you can do to be able to improve your performance in whatever you want to do and be able to get your edge. And so that's what we've been doing on Edge Factor Radio and bringing in different perspectives. Like you said, we've talked to Steve Nash from his perspective as a professional athlete, but then in terms of what it takes to get your body ready to do something like that. But then we've talked to, speaking of sleep, we've talked to Nick Littlehale, sleep expert, and the stuff that he's done in that space is really incredible, and get a chance to kind of pick out really usable and multiple but usable changes and things that you can do to address these areas of high performance as a human being.
Yeah.
And
athlete or not, both.
right, exactly.
Yep.
And so the goal being that as we explore these topics and when we do have a guest who brings in a certain level of expertise on a specific area, or when it's Scott and I talking through a series of quick hitter topics and things like that, we offer these tidbits of information that can all be collected or used one at a time, however they best suit the people on the other side. So we're really excited. We would love to have you come over, visit us on Edge Factor Radio, on iTunes, subscribe and leave us a review, because that's the interaction that we get with our listeners helps us to better form and create the end product as we go with it. So be sure to find us over there. That would be great.
Yeah, I love it. And then Tim, what is the best way for people to follow you on social media and keep up with everything that you're doing, and just, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, all of that?
Yeah. So the first place to go check us out and what we're doing is www.tdathletesedge.com. And the other places that we're very active are Instagram, that's at TDAthletesEdge, Twitter at TDAthletesEdge. We're on Snapchat as well, and we post a lot of videos on YouTube, and you can just search TD Athletes Edge there. We're on Facebook, and I'll just throw back in there to come listen to us over on Edge Factor Radio on iTunes as well. So those are a lot of the main platforms where we're having fun, and we really encourage people to not only come check us out, but drop us a line and any questions and a direct message or any sort of interaction there is great. We love it.
Perfect. And just Tim, just closing question that I ask every guest: if you could give the audience just one piece of advice, and it could be something that maybe helped you along your personal journey, but if you only had one piece of advice to throw out there to the audience, what would it be?
I think it would be to stay present and stay really grounded to the moment, and that borders on being cliche or a little bit corny in some sense. But I think that one of the things that I was somehow naturally good at was being able to not. I always had a vision of and try to always review what my long-term vision is, but never being stuck on what's happening in the future and what's going to happen in the future, but just doing a really kick-ass job in what you're doing in the moment at that time, and letting that quality of work and attention and focus to what you're dealing with and what you're doing right now drive the success that gets you closer to the vision. There's a set time to plan and scope the future, and then there's the rest of the time, which is to be doing amazing at what you're doing right now, as significant or as mundane as it might be, just looking at everything as really, really important and needing your full attention right in that moment.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's amazing. Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I really loved having you. Your story is amazing, and I know that I've personally loved following all of your content. So definitely keep up the amazing work with Instagram and all of your accounts, and especially the podcast. You guys are doing amazing.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're looking forward to getting you over on Edge Factor Radio as well.
Awesome,
so,
let's do it.
Everybody listening should stay tuned for that one too, because you have an amazing story of your own, and you're doing just amazing stuff on your end. So this will be a lot of fun, to be continued.
Awesome, thank you so much, Tim. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Tim. He is such an incredible guy and just has so much knowledge and experience in his field. I know that I'm excited to learn more from him and just to continue to follow him on social media and listen to his podcast. So be sure to just check out everything that he's up to. You can find all of his links to his social media, to his website, and to his podcast, which is Edge Factor Radio. You'll be able to find all of those links in the show notes. But you can also find all of those links if you go to my website at drcaseyjohnson.com. That's DRKASEY Johnson.com. And from there, you'll click on the Listen tab, and then you'll be able to access all of the past podcast guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast. You can read more into each guest, see who they are, what they're all about, and then be able to click on all of their social media accounts, their websites. And for Tim, you can check out Edge Factor Radio's links as well. And be sure to go subscribe to Tim's podcast, Edge Factor Radio. And you'll definitely want to do that because I'll probably be over there sometime in the near future, chatting it up with him and his brother Scott. So go subscribe to his podcast as well. And if you enjoyed my conversation with Tim today, be sure to hop onto iTunes and make sure to subscribe and write a review for the Unlock Wellness podcast. It really helps me out a lot, and I just appreciate all of the support. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate all of the support, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.